I am about to share some excitement with you, meaning this video is going to be exciting. It's going to involve a little bit of math, which is exciting for me, maybe not you, a whiteboard, and most exciting, profits. We're going to talk about profit potential on a rental property. Now, the title of this video is the number one thing that I overlooked when I bought my first rental properties 10 years ago. And I'm first going to tell you what that thing is, and then I'm going to use the whiteboard to actually spell out the numbers to really drive home how big this thing is. Now, when I say something I overlooked, that could be a negative thing, right? That's not what this video is about. This is the number one positive thing that I overlooked, or more accurately, underestimated when I started buying rental properties. And I want you to know about it because I want you to understand the power, or I should say potential power, of profiting that rental property allows for. So what is that thing? What is all this hype about? That thing is rent increases. So let me backtrack a little bit. If you aren't already aware, rental properties make money in 5 different ways. Those 5 ways are cash flow, appreciation, tax benefits, equity build via mortgage paydown, and hedging against inflation. I'm not going to go into the details of what each of those mean in this video, but if you're not familiar with those, I want you to go check out the video that I'm linking to below that's literally called The 5 Profit Centers of Rental Properties, so you can better understand those. Because when you understand all of the ways a property can make money, it's going to better set you up to be able to maximize and be more strategic in what you do with your rental properties, so you can ensure that all those profit centers have as much potential as possible. Great. Okay, so rent increases. Which profit center does that pertain to? Cash flow. Cash flow is the amount of money, whether it's positive or negative, that you are pocketing every month. So your income comes in on a rental property and you have expenses. Are your expenses lower or higher than the income? If they're higher, you're going to be losing money every month. If they are lower, income minus expenses means you're going to have money left over after your expenses are paid, which is money in your pocket. That's cash flow. So back to this rent increases thing, because with all this hype, and then I say something like rent increases, does that even sound very exciting? Probably not, but it is. So when I started buying my rental properties, I knew about these 5 profit centers, and I knew kind of about rent increases. I didn't really put that much thought into it, appreciation, all those kinds of things. Cool. Well, now that I've had my first round of rental properties for 10 years, looking back, oh, okay. Yep. I underestimated rent increases. So not all of my properties we've been increasing like we should have been. Some of them are under market, but I just re-rented or got new tenants in 2 of my properties. That's why this is fresh in my head. So what I'm going to do to really drive home this point of how powerful rent increases are, I'm going to give you the actual numbers on these 2 rental properties so you can see more about the power of rent increases. So I have my whiteboard here, and you're going to have to bear with me a little bit because I've got to kind of do a little bit of erasing and some numbers. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through both properties. You can see I'm getting excited, my whiteboard's here. I'm going to go through both properties because they're kind of different examples, and I want you to be able to see a range of possibilities here. So a couple caveats before I show you these numbers. These are mostly accurate numbers, but minus a little bit. I don't know exactly some of the expenses on both properties. I'd have to dive into that. But all I'm including in the expense category is the mortgage, which includes the property tax and the insurance, and the property management fee. In no way do I ever normally run numbers without including allotments for vacancy and maintenance and that kind of stuff. But for the intention of this video, I want to keep it as simple as possible. So know that these numbers aren't 100% accurate, but they're at least in the ballpark, and I'm comparing apples to apples. So I'm using the same numbers for all the properties, so you can get just a ballpark idea of kind of what we're working with here. Okay, so that's my little caveat, my little warning. These aren't the exact numbers of how I would run a pro forma, but you're going to get the drift. So I'm going to start with my first property. This is the nicest property I have. It's actually the property I used to live in. It was never supposed to be a rental property, but I got a job transfer to California during the crash, so I certainly wasn't going to sell it when it was underwater, so it's become a rental property. So when I rented out the property the first time, it was renting for $995. The mortgage, ironically, with the property taxes and the insurance, was also $995. Most people would call that break even, but in reality, I had other expenses, including vacancy and maintenance and all that kind of stuff. But again, keeping it simple, so I'm only including the property management fee. The property management fee, depending on who you're working with, can be between 6 and 10%. I'm using 10% for the point of this. So my total expenses, the mortgage with the taxes and the insurance, plus property management fee equals $1,094.50. This is what was happening as far as my expenses back 10 years ago when this was all going on. So what does that equate to? $995 rent minus that $1,094.50 equals, I was negative $99.50 a month. So if you do a cash-on-cash equation, and if you're not familiar with cash-on-cash equations and cap rates, check out my video I'll link below called Rental Properties, How to Calculate Rental Property Numbers. I definitely messed up that title, but How to Calculate Rental Property Numbers, and you'll better understand this equation. But when I run this equation, that brings me to a cash-on-cash return of negative 3.4%. Okay, so while I'm talking, I'm going to erase these numbers, and I'm going to tell you today's numbers. So we're going to compare. So remember, negative 3.4%, and I was negative almost $100 a month, right? So are you in suspense about what the rent on this property is today? I know what it is. I'm writing it as we speak. I wrote these numbers down ahead of time so I wouldn't have to do the math in front of you, because that'd be embarrassing if I completely mess it up right in front of you when I'm supposed to be the expert and know what I'm doing. So bear with me. I hope you have your popcorn out and the suspense is building. Almost done. I forgot to tell you on this property, that number in the denominator of the cash on cash was $35,000. I was $35,000 into this property with down payment and closing costs and all that kind of stuff. Now, here we go. The rent today is $1,800. That's up from $995. Pretty good, I'd say. The mortgage and the insurance and taxes, this is a big message. The expenses, as you'll notice, do go up over time as well, but not nearly at the exponential rate that the rents do. That's a huge takeaway here. Yes, there are some increases, but the increases are not as big on the expenses as they are in the income. So, because the rent went up, you'll notice the property management fee went up significantly because it's 10% of the new rent. Okay, no problem. So totaling those together, we have $1,280. $1,800 minus $1,280. I am now cash flowing $520 a month. That is cash in my pocket. Now, start thinking about financial freedom. Let's say you have a passive income goal and you want $10,000 a month in income. There's a big difference in how many properties you need cash flowing to meet $10,000. If they're cash flowing $520 a piece, or what was it, negative $99 a piece? Hello. This puppy can start getting you to your financial goals a lot faster than when you first bought the property. Something to keep in mind. Okay, back to cash on cash. So 520 times 12, divide by the same 35,000, because remember, I'm not more money into this. It's the same that I was originally into it. Now I'm at a 17.8% cash on cash return. Reminder, I was at a negative, what was it? I wrote it down somewhere. I was a negative 3.4% return before, 10 years ago. And now I'm at a 17.8, pocketing $520 a month. Hold the phone. Are you starting to see why I'm so jazzed about rent increases? I'm telling you what, I've seen the rents going up over the years, but now that I'm at the 10-year mark, it is rocking my world, because it's really, I don't know why, but it's the first year that I am really acknowledging how powerful this is. Okay, I have my second property for you. And the one thing that I do want to tell you about this property while I write the numbers down, a little bit of a caveat or a warning. I bought this property during the crash. This was in 2011. You can't get prices and the price to rent ratios like I got on this one at all. Now the cash flow remains the same, but what you're going to see are really, really high cash on cash return numbers. Don't assume that you can find that today. And also don't assume that if you can't find that you're not getting good deals, because that's not true at all. So the cash flow numbers are real, and the cash on cashes are real for me. But again, if you were to buy a comparable property right now, you're going to pay a lot more for it than what I paid for it, because again, it was the crash. And so your cash on cash returns are going to be lower, but the cash flow would be the same. I hope that made sense. If not, leave a comment and ask your questions, because I want to answer your questions. So I'm putting my denominator in the cash on cash. I was $15,000 into this property, which included the down payment plus the closing costs. It's pretty ridiculous. So again, take this cash on cash, as you will. Okay, second property that I just recently re-rented. When I first bought this property in 2011, it was renting for $975. The mortgage and taxes and insurance were $440. Property management fee, assuming 10%, was $97.50. Total that up, $537.50. So we have $975 minus $537.50 equals, I was pocketing at that time $437.50 a month. Now you know why I was buying in Atlanta. This is an Atlanta property, Atlanta in 2011, and why Atlanta was one of the most popular markets back then, because this is absurd. But hey, cool, whatever. Again, we're not here about the specific numbers. We're here about the difference in numbers back then versus today. So if we plug this into a cash on cash, this is where you have to be careful because you can't get these numbers today. That comes to a 35% cash on cash return. Unlike the last property, where the difference with the last property is because I didn't really buy it for cash flow initially, it was really a break-even / negative property. Is that property went from negative cash flow and a negative cash on cash return to not only a positive one, but a high positive one. So this property in particular has always been positive. It was a great deal. And so what we're looking at here is a different scenario where we're just going from good to phenomenal versus kind of bad to functional / good. All right, finishing these numbers here. Sure glad I did this math before I did this video, because you guys would be really bored while I was plugging all this into my calculator, because my brain does not move that fast anymore. Okay, prepare yourself. Again, this cash on cash return, you cannot get today. I cannot say that enough. I don't want you to get let down. But here are the new numbers. The new rent, it just rented for $1,800. I'm as shocked as the next guy. I honestly did not see that coming, but rents have skyrocketed. The new mortgage amount, because the property taxes and the insurance have increased, but again, like I said with the last property, they don't increase at the same exponential rate as the rent increase. So now I'm up to $670. The property management fee is $180, so total $850 in expenses every month. Subtract that from $1,800, I am pocketing $950 a month on this property. Again, think about that in terms of passive income goals, reaching financial freedom. If you want $10,000 in passive income and every property is cash flowing $100 a month, do the math. How many properties do you need to hit $10,000? A lot. But if your properties are cash flowing $1,000 a month, you only need 10. Okay, whoa. That's a big difference in how many properties you need. This is huge, literally and figuratively. For me to build a substantial portfolio doesn't actually require nearly as many properties as I may have once thought it did, because the returns over time on all the profit centers don't just build at a fixed rate, they build exponentially, and this is proof of that. $950 a month? Are you kidding me? And I was only $15,000 into it. So running that cash on cash, 76% return. Ignore that for these purposes, but that's where we are. So what's the summary of this? The The first property went from a negative 3% cash on cash to a 17% cash on cash. Literally, money out of my pocket every month to pocketing $520 a month. Seriously? And then the second property was cash flowing really well. That was $440 a month to now pocketing $950 a month. That's after the expenses. All because of rent increases. I can't tell you how much I underestimated these things when I was buying properties. And I wasn't even noticing it in the 10 years. It wasn't until the 10-year mark when I just re-rented these two properties that I was like, oh, okay. And it got me thinking about the rest of those profit centers. So again, if you're not up on the rest of the profit centers on a rental property, go check out that video below. If you want practice running those numbers, that cash on cash number and cap rate number, I also have that video linked below. And if you have any questions about rent increases, profit centers, rental properties, cash flow, please put them in the comments, because I'm so motivated and jazzed about all of this for my properties that I want to make sure that you're set up to experience something similar. And let's be honest, not every property is going to accelerate in rents that fast. It depends on what you buy and where you buy, what the market's doing. We've been through some crazy times in the last 10 years. But I wanted to share these numbers with you to really drive home a point that I personally did not understand when I got started. So if this was helpful, and or if you're jazzed now, you're like, dang, now I really need rental properties, hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed, because I want to do more of this. I want to give you my real world practical application day in the life of to help you understand your own investing better. So, okay, got myself pretty excited about that. It's awesome. And it's times like this when I look at this stuff that all of the challenges and all the hardships of real estate investing disappear for a minute, and I remember why I'm in this.